These past few weekends, Father Mark has begun his homilies by giving us a particular word to sit with. 2 weeks ago, he gave us the 2024 word of the year, brain rot. Last week, he gave us the church's word for 2025, hope. So I thought I would try and follow suit and give us all a word to sit with this morning. And that word is thalassophobia. Now, many of us may not even know what the word thalassophobia means, but I'm sure there's at least a few of us here who have it. Thalassophobia is defined as an intense fear of deep bodies of water, such as oceans, seas, or lakes. But what I find most interesting about thalassophobia is that it's not a fear of what's in the water, like sharks, for example. Nor is it simply a fear of the water itself. Instead, it's a fear of the deep. I think whether you have thalassophobia or not, we can all recognize that there's something unsettling about the deep. It's mysterious. The true scale of any of the oceans is nearly impossible for our mind to comprehend, even though we have so much scientific data about them. The Israelites of the Old Testament often portray the sea as something chaotic and turbulent. Every culture in every time has myths and stories about what may be lurking in the deep waters of the lakes and seas and oceans around the world. And of course, there are some who are brave enough to venture out into the deep waters. But even the bravest sailor or diver recognizes the volatility of the sea. They're filled with wonder at its immensity, but also respect for its power. As for the rest of us, most of us, I imagine, we are content with avoiding getting caught adrift in the middle of the ocean. We like to keep our feet planted firmly on solid ground, where we know the immense depths of the sea have no power over us. And though we may be comfortable getting on a boat here and there, or even wading a bit into the water, at the end of the day, we always make our way back to land. Because the turbulent and violent depths of the ocean is no place for at least any human to be. So what happens when it's Jesus himself who calls us into the deep? Well, I'll tell you right now, that's exactly what he's doing. He invites each and every one of us out into deep waters. The words we hear from Jesus in today's gospel are the same words that he says to each one of us personally. So I invite you to hear these words of Jesus again, but this time hear them as a personal call and invitation from Christ. Put out into deep waters and lower your nets for a catch. Put out into deep waters and lower your nets for a catch. Now, apart from some ponds and swimming pools, I can't say I've come across very many deep waters here in Clarendon Hills. But still, Jesus does call us into the deep waters. But the deep waters he calls us into are a little different. He calls us into the depths of something that is more vast and more mysterious and more unsettling than even the largest ocean could be. Because he calls each and every one of us into the depths of our own hearts. The Catechism says that the heart is our hidden center, beyond the grasp of our reason and of others. Only the Spirit of God can fathom the human heart and know it fully. The heart is the place of decision, deeper than our psychic drives. It's the place of truth, where we choose life or death. It's the place of encounter. Jesus says to each one of us today, put out into deep waters and lower your nets for a catch. But the great catch that he wants us to reel in is not an abundance of fish, but rather the abundance of his mercy and love. But entering into the depths of the heart is not an easy task. Even the bravest sailor or diver may shrink in fear at the prospect of venturing into the depths of the human heart. Why is that? Because the heart is ultimately the place where we recognize our greatest suffering. It's ultimately the place where we recognize our greatest pain. It's the place where we either choose God or reject him. And how difficult and painful it can be to acknowledge those places where we have rejected him. How hard it is for us to allow the Lord to love us in our sinfulness. For all of us, there are places in our hearts that we would rather not go. There are places too deep for us to feel safe to venture. But it's precisely those places where we are in most need of God's love and mercy that our hearts cry out like Simon Peter. Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful woman. Brothers and sisters, whether we admit it or not, there's something unsettling about the heart. It's mysterious. Its true depth is impossible to conceptualize in our minds. Yet at the same time, there's something about the heart that is beautiful. There's something about the heart that we are drawn to. But our fear of the deep often prevents us from entering into our own hearts. We would rather be stuck in the fear of the unknown than to go into the deep and acknowledge how much we are in pain, than to acknowledge the burdens that we carry day in and day out, and to acknowledge the sin that weighs us down. Those places in our hearts where we are afraid to venture are precisely the place where the Lord is calling us, put out into deep waters. Put out right there and lower your nets for a catch. But the Lord knows that this is hard to do. And so he gives us a very simple encouragement, one that should pierce us to the core. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Be not afraid to acknowledge that burden that has been weighing you down, even at this very moment. Be not afraid to humbly come before Christ and admit our desperate need of his grace. Be not afraid to be transformed by the love and mercy of the Lord, because it's in his love that we only become more fully alive. Ultimately, Christ says to each one of us, be not afraid to enter into the depths of your heart, because it is there that you will encounter me. And that's what we all desire, isn't it? To simply encounter Christ, to simply know of his love for us. So I invite you today to enter into your own heart, even here at this Mass. I invite you to hear the invitation of the Lord as he says to you, put out into deep waters and lower your nets for a catch. And then to respond to him with your full heart saying, I am ready, Lord. I am ready to go into the deep. Brothers and sisters, be not afraid, because it is only when we enter into the deep that we will encounter Christ there waiting for us.